Cry the whole way home. So basically, we're actually a band too.
Yeah. What's that called? A trio?
A trio?
Trio?
A triot?
A triage.
Triage.
A trio.
Triage.
Yeah.
Cleo.
Ema.
Ema. Ricky.
Okay. My name is Kate Spiegelman, and I'm a sophomore at ECS.
Sarah Kate Spiegelman. But anyways, I'm McKinley Moody. I'm a senior at Briarcrest, and I'm going to Loyola Chicago in the fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm Abby. I'm a senior in Arlington. Sorry, I just came back from a long convention. I'm not thinking of
She's not here.
But I'm going to UT chat.
Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're on a podcast.
Called What's the
pretty
Point?
Cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Never been on a podcast before.
No, me either.
Me neither.
I don't think I ever anticipated to be on a podcast. Ever.
I did.
You did?
Yeah. I always kind of knew
that I would be on one, or that you would
me,
be on
personally. I mean, I feel like you could be on a podcast too.
One. Yeah, I
Yes,
know,
you
because
are,
I'm
but-
just like super cool and fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to talk about last Wednesday's lesson.
Talk.
Lesson, talk, whatever
Lesson
you
talk.
want
I
to call
think
it.
we call it a talk.
Yeah.
Talk. Yeah.
Talk the talk, walk the walk. Anyways, so yes, I guess now we should talk about what the point is.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
Okay.
the point, guys?
Okay,
It's the point about justice.
yeah, she talked a lot about justice and like, knowing like when things were right or like when they aren't quite right. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that question you were gonna ask?
Oh, yeah. She first started her
Because that
talk
could get
off.
us on a tangent.
Yes, she started her talk off with what pops into your head when you hear the word injustice, and I thought that would be something like kind of
Yeah, that is something good to start off with.
I feel like there's a lot of different things that you
Yeah.
could like take from that. I don't really know if I have a certain thing that like immediately comes to mind. When I think of like injustice, I think of someone being like treated unfairly,
Yeah.
or getting something that like they do not deserve in a bad way. But one of the other things she started off with was like the reality is, sorry, I have like the notes on my phone, but the reality is that we sometimes as believers don't do anything about injustice because we don't allow ourselves to get close enough to ask what is happening or what to do. So I think like the first step of not preventing that, but like walking someone through that is by like getting to know them so that you can get to a point
Getting closer
in a relationship where
Yeah.
you know that that person is like comfortable to talk to you about what they're going through.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind whenever I hear injustice and things like that is just, I don't know why, but George Floyd, because that was just such a big deal.
Yeah.
And for good reasons, it was dragged out for an extended period of time, and just people were wrongfully convicted and that kind of thing. That's a really big injustice that stands out in my mind.
Yeah, I think that kind of along the same lines as like racial injustice is what
Mhm.
really comes to my mind. I just did a paper on like systemic poverty and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
literacy rates, and how like those like kids who like just grow up in systemic poverty, like they can't control that.
And it's
But,
hard
like-
to get out of it, too.
Yeah, and like but their like literacy rates are just so much like lower than other kids because like they just don't have that like the resources and
Mhm.
stuff. And so like I like when she was talking about that, I was like, oh, like that kind of reminded me
Mhm.
of that, and like how like it's just not fair to those kids because
Mhm.
like they didn't choose to grow
It's just
up
setting
there.
them up for a poor future and
Yeah.
just continuing that cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think everyone just gets really comfortable in whatever environment they're in,
Mhm.
and no one wants to branch out into the unknown to maybe help someone else.
And I think like one of the things that she was talking about is how like Jesus always fights for what's right, and so like when you're following him, if you're like truly are, you become more like him in that specific way, because when you're living like Jesus, you're more likely to, you know, like enter in someone's life and like be someone that they can talk to about what they're going through. And so I think that was like one of the biggest takeaways, because I've never really known, like you never really know what someone's going through until you like actually get to know them. And once you get to know them, I think one of like the greatest things in a friendship like that is when you guys can have real and meaningful
Mhm.
conversations about like what you guys are going through and like how God didn't create us to go through life alone. And I think when injustice comes to mind, like there's always, I think it's important to have someone by your side to help you go through that, whether that's like a friend or a leader. But I think that's something that's super important.
Yeah, I think another thing that's important is just to be able to have really mature conversations about injustice and not just kind of glaze over it, because whenever people hear that word, sometimes immediately their guard kind of goes up, and just some people might shut down or just completely shut out what you're about to say. But just being able to talk through hard things like that is extremely important.
Yeah.
And we did that like when we went
Yes.
to the
Dina.
Yeah, it was Gina, I think.
Mhm.
And we went to Oasis of Hope. Wasn't it
Mhm.
Oasis? And we had like a really
yeah.
good conversation about like injustice and like
Mm-hmm.
I really liked how she like the leader of Oasis like opened up the floor.
Joy.
Yes, and she just it was like y'all could ask me any question in the book, and
Mhm.
like I
It's
don't know,
honestly such an intimidating question because,
yeah,
I mean, obviously she's black and the majority of us were white, and I just like, I have questions, but I don't want to offend, but at the same time, can I really even offend if it's coming from a good place in my heart?
yeah. And I feel like when people like give you the door to open the door to like let you ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Knowing it's from a good place.
Yeah,
What?
sorry, I just like, we're doing a
And like
podcast,
before
it's so
we can
funny.
do anything about it, like we have to notice it. And
Yeah.
that's one of like the main things that she had said, like you have to notice it before you can do anything about it. And like
Mhm.
I wrote these down, but the 3 challenges that she gave
Yes.
us to move towards it was to get close enough to notice it, be curious and listen to those experiencing injustice, and be courageous enough to name the injustice, which is like, I think a lot of times if you're going through something that you don't want to admit that you're going through, or like something wrong in your life, I think it's always important to like pinpoint exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Even if it's something like you don't like, you or like your friend doesn't want to hear. Like I think being truthful and all of that is super important. And then like one of the questions that she said was, what is one step that you can take to move toward justice?
Well, just going back to those 3 challenges, like
Yeah.
being courageous enough to name the injustice, like that really stuck out to me.
Mhm.
I underlined that like 3
Yeah.
times, because like I feel like sometimes we're just like, oh, like that's like we just named like the examples of injustice, but we're like, no, like this is that person's story, and like we need to like go back and like,
go in
Yeah.
depth with it.
like not all like forms of like racial injustice are just like the same story every single
Mhm.
time. Like yes, there's like a similar underlying
Yeah.
current,
Theme.
but like there's
And
not
even
like,
things like outside of that, outside
Yeah.
of racial injustice. Like I think there's so many types of it.
Mhm.
And there's like so many different ways that you can handle it. But I think it's important to like remember that there's a lot that a person can be going through. And like I think injustice can mean so many things. So that's just something that like I feel like we need to keep in mind. Like you never really know what a person's going through. I know I said that earlier.
yeah.
I feel like so many injustices go hand in hand, like you were talking about with the poverty and literacy rates and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a vicious cycle because in some, or basically everywhere, public schools are funded by the area that they're in. So
Right.
lower or just poverty-stricken areas get funding from that community for their schools. And so obviously in that kind of area, it's going to have a lot less funding than a place that has a lot of money. And that just kind of adds to low literacy rates and all that kind of stuff, which also
Yeah.
goes back in with racial injustice. So it all just kind of feeds off of the other things around it.
And like especially in Memphis, like there's I think there's like 70,000 nonprofits in Memphis or some like crazy wild number like that. So it's not like there's like nobody taking a change and like trying to make a change to do like good, but it's just like there's so much and sometimes it's so hard.
And it's always the really bad things get publicized a lot, and a bunch of the good stuff just kind of stays
happens,
under
like,
the
every
radar.
day.
The radar, yeah. And
Yeah.
it also just takes a long time for things to really start changing.
Yeah, and I think like something that applies in our lives a lot is like within school, like I mean, oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Injustice can like look like if it's a home situation or like at school, if like someone's being bullied.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, like one of the things you said, like pinpointing it and knowing how to like be courageous enough to, you know, like what would Jesus do
Right.
in that situation? Like, I think there's a lot of things that, even though there's some injustices that like people can't control, like I think in our lives there's a lot that we can control. And I think living more like Jesus would be to just, well, I get like a lot of times it's scary, like it's easier said than done, but I think like my encouragement to people would just be oh my goodness, would be to just like stand firm in what you believe in. And you know, if someone's getting picked on or like something that you can control, like I would say just, you know,
if you're witnessing something around you, and you're saying all these things like, oh, injustice is awful, this, that, and the other, just
Right.
in favor of that.
yeah,
Don't just watch it happen. Actually do something to combat it. It's like if someone's getting bullied or you see someone just getting picked on, whatever, step in, because it kind of can feel hard in the moment, but it's really worth it to say something.
Yeah. When you were saying that, I thought of, I was at convention this weekend for student council, and one of these people were like, these two people were giving a speech, and their like campaign slogan was like something with like cows. I don't know. So people would like their little thing, they would like moo. And so after their speech, they did a really great speech, and they were walking up the stage, and the whole crowd started mooing. But like the vice president, when he came up back on stage, like to introduce the next candidate, he was like, y'all need to stop booing. He thought they were booing them, and he stood up for them, and he was like stop booing them, like they worked so hard for this, they deserve this.
Just mooing.
Yeah, and we were like, no, they're just like mooing. And it was hilarious, but it was just like that was just like the thing that came to my head, because like his first reaction was to stand up for them and be like, don't like stop making fun of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my gosh,
like that's
such
what
a good
Jesus
analogy,
does.
Abby.
Yes, I was like, perfect. It's just, yeah. And I feel like it's our job, like as believers too, to like distinguish like what like how we should stand up for, like, you know, because there's like different instances where you should stand up in like different situations. Like sometimes you do need to say something to everybody, but sometimes like you might need to like pull that person aside and be like, look, I'm sorry that happened, but like, yeah, like how can we fix this next time?
Yeah, I would say just like going into this week, like if anyone's watching this, just don't be afraid to like stand up for people and like live for Jesus. Like what would he do in those situations? Like even if it's something tough that like you might not be able to control, I think always like having a loving God to look to is something that's super sweet and all of that.
I feel like in high school, it's so easy, whether you're in a class, lunchroom, wherever, other people may be talking down about someone. Just, it happens everywhere, all the time. Someone might be talking down about someone, and it can be so hard in the moment, especially when you're surrounded by your peers, but to just be like, hey, don't say that. It's such a difficult thing, but I have to step back and realize like, oh, I'm doing this because I have a God who loves me, and I want to show that love to other people, because who knows, even at a Christian school, like you can still be surrounded by all these people who just don't exhibit that, because not everyone's going to be Christian. And so just being a really good example of God's love is a very good thing to do.
Yeah. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. But thank you guys for watching.
Yes.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.